Good day, everybody. It's Andrew here, and welcome back to my channel. We've got some more huge updates regarding the next stimulus package. President Biden is being urged to use executive action to approve more stimulus. So let's discuss the details, what this means for stimulus and Social Security benefits. But before we jump into it, do me a quick favor. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, and share this channel with anyone who you think might find this helpful. This is a community for seniors, and my job here is to be a voice for you and be a voice for seniors to make sure that President Biden keeps his promises to increase Social Security benefits, increase SSI, and increase ssdi as well. So thank you so much for being a part of our community, and if you really want to support my work, subscribe to my second channel. The link to that is going to be in the comments of this video, and on that channel we're going to have some updates as well, but we're also going to do things like play bingo and play casino games live. So thank you to the 5,000 people who have subscribed to that channel. It really goes a long way in supporting my work. Now, what is going on now? At this point, everybody knows that Joe Manchin has basically put the stimulus package on pause, but now Democrats are looking for another way forward, a plan B to still get the stimulus package done. Of course, as Bernie Sanders is trying to do a stimulus check for seniors, we're also trying to get monthly stimulus checks for families, lower prescription drug costs, and expand Medicare to include hearing care as well. So what's going on and what's the current plan? Well, a lot of Democrats are urging President Biden to use executive action to try and get some of the stimulus portions done. Now, could this potentially be stimulus checks for seniors? Could this be an increase to Social Security benefits? Let's discuss the details and exactly what he could do through executive action. But first, let's watch a quick clip from Representative Jayapal, one of the leading liberal Democrats pushing President Biden to use executive action. So let's take a quick look, see what she had to say, and then we'll discuss the details and what we expect to happen next.
Yes, it is a tremendous frustration because we all thought we were negotiating in good faith. And the optimist in chief of the Rachel Maddow show says that the things that we are working on are hard. They are. If they were done, if they were easy, they would be done. They're not. They're hard. And we can't give up, and we won't give up. And that's why we will pursue a two-track strategy now to both push for the Build Back Better legislation to pass the Senate, and we are also calling on the president to take some significant executive actions that will make people's lives better today, and that will also put pressure on continuing to get legislation through instead of doing it through executive action. So we'll have a two-track process here. We're not giving up, but it's a hard day.
Okay, so she said two-track process, and what they meant by that is they want to trim the stimulus package down. The stimulus package that's currently sitting in the Senate, the stimulus package that Joe Manchin said he will no longer vote for, they want to trim that down, take some of those things out so Joe Manchin will vote for them, and then put the rest of those remaining items through executive action, right? So the question is, what would they do through executive action? Could it potentially include the stimulus check for seniors? Could it include increasing Social Security benefits? Would it be the monthly stimulus checks for families? What exactly could be included? Well, let's take a quick look. Representative Jayapal was actually asked, what exactly do they think he could do through executive action? So let's take a look here. She was asked, what is it that you think you could do through executive action, and what pieces of this or what goals do you think he could get through by executive action without any actual legislation passing? She said, quote unquote, well, we'd love to see some things done through executive action. And meeting with the Progressive Caucus in the House, I think that there are some things that could be done, especially around healthcare. They want to lower things like insulin prices, lower prices on EpiPens, and try and lower prescription drug prices across the board. And that's something that they really think they can do through executive action. Now, of course, that would be really helpful for seniors. They also want to try and extend the pause on student loan payments, which is supposed to end at the end of January, as well as potentially cancel $50,000 in student loan debt per person. Now, these are things that they believe could be done through executive action. Now, when it comes to stimulus checks and potentially changing Social Security benefits, the way things are currently written, it doesn't seem like President Biden could actually do these items through executive action now. It's something they could try and find a workaround for. If you remember, former President Trump actually used FEMA. They used FEMA funds to extend the unemployment benefits for about 4 months. That's something they could look into doing, some kind of workaround like that by declaring a national emergency. But as things stand today, they could potentially include lowering prescription drug prices, especially insulin and things like that, potentially expanding Medicare to include hearing care, and canceling some amount when it comes to student loan debt. But it doesn't seem like they could do stimulus checks or Social Security benefits unless they found some kind of workaround. Again, declaring some kind of national emergency, using FEMA funds, some kind of tricky plan like that, like former President Trump did. So that's currently what they're working on, and they're trying to find the middle ground where what can they take out to get Joe Manchin to approve in the stimulus package? How can they change things to get that done, and then do some things through executive action? Hopefully they can find some kind of compromise where they take enough things out to still be able and include these stimulus checks for seniors in this next package. That's our best case scenario, and that's what we're hoping comes to fruition. Now, Joe Manchin recently said that he's actually open again to trying to get the package done if they change the tax policy. See, so although Manchin said he wasn't going to vote for the package at all, the very next day he came back and said, well, if we change certain things, we might be able to get the package done, right? So things are once again heading in the right direction, much too slowly, but are heading in the right direction. So it looks like Manchin is focused on trying to change the tax policies that President Trump enacted in 2017. Of course, that's something that Kyrsten Sinema from Arizona has problems with, so it's going to be interesting. Is this the kind of thing where Joe Manchin's going to put his foot down, Kyrsten Sinema is going to be willing to compromise, or are things going to continue to get delayed because these two are going to continue to disagree on whether or not to change the 2017 tax cuts? That's something that Kyrsten Sinema was really adamant about that would not get changed in this package. So that's going to be something to watch, right? Is Joe Manchin going to get his way? Is Kyrsten Sinema going to be willing to compromise? And will President Biden do executive action to try and get the remaining portions of this stimulus package done? Of course, there's also the fact that President Biden promised to do another package in 2022, and in that package, we expect Social Security changes to be included next year, because that's something we've been waiting for, right? We were promised an increase in benefits across the board. We were promised a minimum monthly benefit of at least $1,500 to $1,600 per month, and we're holding President Biden to his word. We're hoping these things come to fruition, especially given the fact that we're almost 1 year into his presidency, and these things still have not gotten done. So with that said, folks, this is what we're currently monitoring. Will Joe Manchin compromise with Democrats? Obviously, we're not holding our breaths as things are taking way too long, and he continues to say no, but then come back with more demands. Will President Biden use executive action to get more stimulus programs done? And will they do Social Security changes next year in the next stimulus package? All of these things will continue to develop, so please subscribe, and I will keep you posted as we get more updates. And with that said, folks, thank you so much for watching. And right now we have a clip kind of highlighting what's going on with Joe Manchin, why he's refusing to support the package, what they expect to happen next, and the fact that liberals are kind of upset because Joe Manchin gave his word that if they approved the physical stimulus plan, they would then later on go ahead and get the stimulus check package done, right? Remember, originally these two packages were supposed to be linked. They decoupled them because Joe Manchin gave his word. Then they approved the physical stimulus plan, and now we're sitting here with Joe Manchin saying he's not going to vote for it, or he will, but only if they completely change the entire thing, right? Basically, Joe Manchin did not keep his word, and liberals are fuming over this, and this is why they're pushing President Biden to go ahead and use executive action. So with that said, if you want to stick around, let's take a quick look. Watch this clip describing exactly what is going on, what we expect to happen next, and how progressive Democrats are responding to Joe Manchin, and what their plans are moving forward. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.
Sahil, you called this a knife to President Biden's Build Back Better Act. And you could argue a knife to the president himself, considering the White House has come out and said basically that Joe Manchin lied to the president's face. What is the reaction on Capitol Hill to the senator?
Shock, anger, feelings of betrayal. There's some regret that they decoupled it from that infrastructure bill that Joe Manchin co-wrote and was deeply invested in, that they believe that surrendered a lot of the leverage Democrats had to ultimately get him to yes. But most importantly, Katie, there's a lot of determination among Democrats to salvage something, anything that they can from this bill, because the stakes are sky high here, not only for President Biden politically, whether history ultimately sees him as a successful president, given how much of his agenda is roped up in this bill, not only for Democrats who want to campaign on this in the 2022 midterm elections. Remember, this bill remains popular with a large majority of the country, even as President Biden's approval rating has tanked to about 40%. But most importantly, the stakes for ordinary people. If, for instance, the child tax credit is not extended, it expires this month. It has cut child poverty by nearly half, as the White House has frequently pointed out this year. That child poverty rate is about to go up again sharply if this bill is not passed and it is not extended. There's also the issue of climate change. The Build Back Better Act, as passed by the House, has more than $500 billion of investments in clean energy to combat climate change, the largest ever in U.S. history. Some Democrats have pointed out that the planet is not going to stop melting while Congress tries to figure out its politics and get it together. So that's where Democrats are. They're going to try to keep together what they can of this bill. It's going to require, according to Joe Manchin's own words, making sure everything is paid for on a 10-year basis. It will mean painful sacrifices, but notably, Speaker Pelosi, who has been in this situation before and trying to get, wrangle difficult votes to get a major piece of legislation over the line with the ACA, spoke moments ago in San Francisco, did not have a word of criticism for Joe Manchin, said she believes he cares about the country, and said she remains confident that he will get to yes on some version of this bill. Katie.
Sahil, thank you. Julie, you are in West Virginia. I'm just wondering, any reaction from either the senator himself or people down there to what NBC News is now confirming, that behind the scenes in conversations with other senators about the child tax credit, he was saying that he was worried the money was going to go to drugs and not to kids?
Well, Katie, I've been getting a lot of reaction today from the senator's office, from advocates, and from people on the ground. And I want to start with the advocates who have been texting me nonstop, because remember, West Virginia is one of the states worst hit by the opioid epidemic. So some of them see his comments as completely tone deaf. But for the senator's part, his spokeswoman passed a statement along to NBC News saying Senator Manchin has made clear he supports the child tax credit and believes the money should be targeted to those who need it most. He has also expressed support for a paid leave program that has a dedicated, sustainable funding mechanism. Obviously, that last part, we've heard this in negotiations of Senator Gillibrand trying to get him to yes. He wants to make sure that people basically deserve to get these programs. And I spoke to a bunch of people on the ground here on both sides of this issue. He's very popular in this state. Obviously, this state has been trending more and more to the right in the last couple of decades. But I want you to take a listen to two people I spoke to today, one on one side of this issue and one on the complete opposite end.
It's inconceivable that at Christmas time, especially, that he would leave 350,000 children in West Virginia and their families without the certainty that they will have enough money to pay the Christmas bills, that they will have enough money to pay their rent.
I can barely put gas in my car now as it is. So, I mean, any other drastic steps that would alter West Virginia at all right now is just, it's kind of scary. I can see why Joe would be skeptical.
So, Katie, you see people have different opinions here on this side of the issue, depending on where their priorities lie. I spoke to mothers here who told me that last child tax credit payment they received on December 15th that made sure their kids got either extra child care during the week or an extra pair of shoes for school. They're scared they're not going to be able to provide their kids with that come the new year. And I also spoke to people like Wes. You heard from him there, who's concerned about inflation, who's working multiple jobs, and who relies on lumber, on gas, to make ends meet. And if those prices keep going up, he's saying we don't need any more help like this Build Back Better legislation. We just need to control what's happening here in our state.
John, I know Senator Manchin is from a red state, a state that does not support Joe Biden, and this is a Democratic piece of legislation. He's obviously voiced a lot of concern about it over the course of the past few months. We just reported what our Hill team confirmed on the child tax credit, that he was worried that it would go to drug use. We've also confirmed another piece of an article from the Huffington Post, this one about the paid leave time. Joe Manchin was telling senators, according to our Capitol Hill team, that he was worried that the men in his state would use it to go hunting instead of spending time with their families. I'm wondering, politically speaking, does he risk offending his constituents, his state, with how little he seems to regard their ability to make smart choices for themselves?
Yeah, that's not the most flattering depiction of the residents of the state that has voted for him a number of times. He also is someone who, his critics are very quick to point out, drives a Maserati, which also doesn't seem to be perhaps in step with a lot of his fellow West Virginians. But let's be clear, though, he is someone who certainly doesn't feel like he has any political repercussions to suffer back at home. He was elected, he's been elected there several times. This is a state that Trump won, of course, by almost 40 points. Certainly he has to be mindful of a Republican challenger. So therefore, there's not going to be a Democrat who beats him there. And he's very fond of saying to his colleagues on the Hill that if not me, you'd have a Republican. So you may not agree with me on everything, but because I'm here and casting ballots for most of the Biden and Democrats' agenda, you have things like new judges installed. And Biden, just in the last couple of days, hit a high watermark for judges put into office in his first year. So I think that is part of the calculation here. It's also why a lot of people don't think that there is a real threat that Manchin would change parties, in part because his influence would dramatically be reduced. He'd just be one of 51 then Republicans, and obviously that would give the GOP the chamber, but his own sway would dramatically decline, as opposed to now where he is sort of the linchpin of the Senate. But certainly, Katie, I'll just, as a final note, it can't be overstated just how angry the White House is with Manchin. They recognize it's a dance. They figured it's a negotiation, and they're not saying it's over. They still believe that some form they could get something done, perhaps down the road. But they believe he looked the president in the eye, shook the president's hand, and said, look, we can get there. And we've reported today that Biden himself told confidants after they met on Tuesday that, sure, he knew they had work to do, but he believed in early 2022 that Manchin would get to yes. And instead, that's why the White House was so blindsided by the senator's Fox interview on Sunday. And the venue also raised eyebrows because they didn't see it coming at all. And President Biden didn't get a personal heads up from the senator.
It does seem like they are very angry, at least from the tone of that statement that was released. I'm very curious to see what Jen Psaki says and whether there's been any interaction between the senator and the president since his interview on Fox News. Brez, I do want to direct that same question, though, to you about Manchin. I know you've been reporting on him for years. You're reporting on the Senate for years, Congress for years.
So I'm old. Is that what you're saying?
No, you're experienced and you are wise, is what I'm trying to say. I guess bring us into Manchin's thinking here and why we would suddenly start hearing these sort of leaks about what he was saying in conversation, stuff that is not flattering, that does not show him having the highest esteem for the American public and especially his own constituents.
Yeah, these are clearly leaks meant to hurt Manchin. That's for sure. I just want to play this back. I mean, it's not shocking to me that he's a no. It's shocking how he was a no and his timing on a no. I mean, think about it. Manchin, the House passes a $3.5 trillion bill, but Manchin in July wrote a letter saying, I'll only do $1.5 trillion. And then you could tell in the last couple of weeks, Manchin was searching for a way to get to no, frankly. It seemed like it. I mean, we had reported at one point last week he was a no on the motion to proceed on getting on Build Back Better. If they tried to bring it to the floor, and he said it wasn't true, but it was clear that he was looking for, he wasn't going to back this legislation, not how it is. There was leaks. He was against the child tax credit for a 1-year extension rather than a 10-year extension. He didn't like all the gimmicks that the House had put in the bill to try to fit it in at $3.5 trillion. I mean, I'm just not shocked that he's a no. The bitterness, the wave of outrage is really surprising to me. And that, and now Manchin is he's taking shots at the White House taking shots at him. I mean, today on West Virginia radio, he's like, Joe Manchin made clear what he wanted to say. If you wanted this bill to pass, elect more liberals. I mean, which is what he said before. So, I mean, it's just fascinating. This, I think that I feel like this is a lot like the McCain issue in 2017 when he voted against the late Senator John McCain when he voted against Obamacare repeal and sunk it, and the Trump White House just went after McConnell. They were bitterness, but at that point they were able to pivot to tax cuts, which is something Republicans agreed on. Democrats have nothing they all agree on. So, they don't have that pivot. They really need to find some way to get Manchin on board for something.